Hi, this is Disciples Discussion, again here at First Christian in Bedford. And as usual on this little podcast, we're going to try to answer a few simple questions like why spirituality, why religion, why Christianity, why disciples of Christ, and why you should join us here at Bedford First Christian. And today the topic is maybe, again, one of the most important topics in all of Christianity, but what is communion, and then what is open communion? So we'll try to tease out those differences. I'm a deacon here. My name is Lincoln Merchant.
I'm minister here. My name's Will Brown.
Yep. And I would say that communion, for someone who really has never heard anything about it, but who has at least heard of a religion, we would describe it probably as the first or second most important ritual in Christianity, along with baptism.
Yeah, I'd say for our church, that's probably those two things, baptism and communion, are probably two of the biggest things that are defining features.
And in terms of Christianity, I don't know that I've ever heard of a Christian denomination or branch of Christianity that doesn't do some kind of communion. It's different, obviously, across the spectrum of all the branches of Christianity, but have you ever heard of one that doesn't do it at all?
You just said that, and I'm like, I had to think back. I can't think of anybody who doesn't. Some groups will do it quarterly, monthly, less often. The folks who show up twice a year, Christmas and Easter, get communion twice a year because that's when they show up, but that's not a dig on them. I'm glad for them, but I can't think of any groups that don't do communion at all. I'm sure there probably is somewhere historically, but...
Well, it's what communion is also called the Eucharist, but it is a ritual sacred meal that consists of bread and wine, or in our case, or in some cases, grape juice instead of wine. But and that's actually important depending on your denomination.
Yes.
But basically, it's bread and wine, and it commemorates the Last Supper that Jesus had in his earthly ministry with his 12 disciples.
Yeah.
Before he was arrested, or before he was betrayed, arrested, and crucified. And he asked in the three, they call them the three synoptic gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. They tell the story very similarly, and he asked us in that to do this meal in remembrance of him. So that's why it basically extends across all denominations, because it's in those three. And then John, as I'll quote from John here in a minute, the fourth gospel, he also talks about it, but in a little bit different way, but very explicit. It's still very explicit. And then St. Paul, who was the first writer to the apostles, who knew some of them, who would have been at that table, even by the year 50 A.D., which was only 20 years or so after Christ's death and resurrection, he talked about it. So even in that very first generation of Christians, it was already a well-known practice.
Yeah. It became, and in the centuries following that, the Romans took keen interest in communion also. I might be skipping ahead a little bit in terms of timeline of when things happened, but the Romans took a stark interest in this group that eats their Lord's flesh and drinks his blood.
Right.
Part of that meaning bound up in communion, or the language. Romans thought that a lot of these early Christians were cannibals, which already being kind of a fringe group. really didn't. Yeah, new group, and they really did not jive well with some of the persecution that they already were in the midst of in that time.
Right. I guess I started out talking about it as a sacred meal.
Yeah.
But it's a sacred meal because Jesus says the bread is his body and the wine is his blood. And whenever you eat them and drink them, you are eating his body and his blood. And I mean, that's if you think that sounds strange and not just like not just like we're having a Thanksgiving dinner and we're passing the turkey to each other, it is very strange and was very strange to people at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's in the Bible that it was strange and freaked out Jesus' own disciples.
Yeah.
Which I'll read here in a minute.
And it was and the meal they were commemorating that this took place around, part of what got the disciples too was that there was a traditional meal that was an identity feast for the Jewish people at the time.
Right. Passover.
Part of that Passover feast, they remember the Moses leading them out of Egypt. There were plagues, and God spared them from the plagues and the last plague, and they had to leave quickly. Mm-hmm. Hence, it's supposed the original communion would have been unleavened bread, mm-hmm. and there was a number of things. There were a lot of pieces to that meal. Oftentimes, they're called Seder meals. Mm-hmm. Really fascinating. If you get the opportunity to wash or partake in a Seder meal, worth doing. There's a lot of fascinating symbolism. Mm-hmm. Jesus changed some of that symbolism, though, in how he did that dinner, which is part of what, for the disciples, as recorded in the Gospels, what they experienced. That's part of what tipped them on edge a little bit. It was a change in some of this centuries-old tradition that gave them identity. To put that in a different arena, think about somebody reassigning. If I say bald eagle, mm-hmm. we all assign meaning to that as Americans in terms of patriotism. Imagine somebody redefining something with that. Little bit different arena, but same kind of idea in terms of thinking about meaning.
Right. It had a significant meaning, and now it has a new significant meaning.
Yeah.
Which was, like you say, I mean, it would have been offensive
yeah.
to both the Jewish people, for whom it would have been a strange, maybe heretical alteration of Passover, and then very strange to Romans and Gentiles who weren't shy about sacrificing animals and eating animal sacrifices, but by that time
cannibalism's off the menu.
It was much less common by that time.
Yeah.
Though not completely uncommon.
Yeah, true, yeah.
So, but that's that sharing of that meal is something that different churches do at different times. But as I said, it goes all the way back to the beginning, and I'm just going to read from St. Paul, 1 Corinthians, chapter 11, 23 to 26. This is something you'll hear in a lot of churches if you go. A lot of churches practice communion pretty often.
Yeah.
Not every week or not every month necessarily, but fairly often. And a lot of them say a version of this. For I received from the Lord what I also handed on to you, that the Lord Jesus, on the night when he was betrayed, took a loaf of bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and said, "This is my body that is for you. Do this in remembrance of me." In the same way, he took the cup also after supper, saying, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood. Do this as often as you drink it in remembrance of me. For as often as you eat this bread and drink the cup, you proclaim the Lord's death until he comes." So, if you go to a Christian service you will almost, especially a high holy service in some cases, but you'll hear a version of that. Those are the words of institution.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I had a hard time not doing the motions with
Right.
it. Well,
Right.
muscle memory. It's
Like I said, that goes back to
that goes back to
the first generation of Christians.
Yeah, from Christ.
From Christ.
Yeah.
So it's a very important. And then, but obviously it's if you've never heard of it, it's got to be a very weird thing. It makes sense to share a meal.
Yeah.
But to share a meal made up of your God is a little different.
Yeah. And different churches different denominations and different times, different churches have found different scopes of meaning to what communion is. Some churches will say, in some traditions, when the religious leader or priest blesses it, says the words of institution and blesses it, in their theology, that becomes the literal, physical body and blood of Christ. Other traditions will see it as a symbol, a symbolism. I would say that's predominantly disciples' churches. It's a symbol of our faith.
Right.
And some churches it has to be administered by the priest to believers. Other churches, anybody can do communion. A friend of mine in seminary, he's a disciples minister. He was serving a Presbyterian congregation. He planned a whole weekend retreat around communion for the youth group. And he was telling his senior pastor about it, and the senior pastor said, that's awesome. You can't do that because he was not Presbyterian.
Right.
There was some other things around that also. I can't remember all the details, but
Right.
he had to pivot real hard and fast to come up with an alternative plan for the weekend.
I mean, maybe people haven't noticed. Maybe but the kind of certainly this. I think our disciples' church preserves a lot of the outline of traditional liturgy.
Yeah.
And the traditional Christian liturgy. And by the way, traditional in this sense means going back thousands of years, not the old time religion of 1955. You know what I mean? It means of 55, AD, not 1955. So the liturgy, the communion meal is what the church service is building to every time. You come into the service from outside, you come more and more together, and you come to the point of sharing communion. And it's the climax of the ritual. It's a ritual that you participate in. That's what participation is what makes a ritual different than a show.
Yes.
The Christian service is a shared. Well, it's not. I don't even know if it's not even pointless to say shared. A ritual is shared.
Yeah.
It's a group.
It's a communal
participatory. Event.
I'm glad you clocked that because when we set that worship service up, we were kind of figuring out some post-COVID stuff when I first got here, and that was the goal, was to have that be everything builds towards communion. That's the grand finale, and then we send everybody out. So I'm glad that functions the way that's supposed to.
And from what I understand, that's the same way in Catholic and Orthodox, and like nobody starts with communion. You build up to communion.
Yeah. Although now I'm wondering, maybe we could play with that a little bit. A lot of churches used to do heresy. I know a lot of churches will do communion halfway through the service and do the message as the last part. They're central on the word. Part of that came to be, though, because if they have a meal afterwards, they wanted everybody to be able to participate in communion, and then the ones that went to go prep the meal could duck out and listen to the service on a speaker or something. Or I know a lot of churches will arrange their worship service in that way. Kind of depends on what's going on in the congregation.
And at this might be a little out of order, but
Yeah.
at this church, if you come here, you would see outside as you go into the sanctuary, you would be given little single serving cups of juice, grape juice, and like a little cracker,
Yeah.
which are called the elements of communion, and you can take those and then we'll have the service and we'll all take together. But once in a while we'll have special service where we will all line up and actually get chunks of bread and dip it right.
Yeah.
And that's for us, that's kind of a special service when we do that. But
Yeah.
in other churches, the priest will hand you or literally give you the communion wafer in your mouth,
Yeah.
and they'll either dip it for you, or in some churches they would all drink, which is I don't know if we could ever go back to that, all drinking out of the same cup.
Not in a formal church setting. I don't think. And
Right.
the backwash on that is terrifying. Oh.
But I have heard in like medieval times, it's like we get one little bread and one little bit of juice. But in medieval times, no, they meant it. It's a meal. You get a big piece of bread and a lot of wine, and
share a meal around a table together. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And we just saw that one guy talk about how maybe Jesus didn't even mean it as in like just bread and wine. Just anytime you eat anything and drink anything,
Every meal.
make it a communion meal in remembrance of him.
Yeah, he really put focus on as often as you do this,
Right.
sit down around a table to eat, which is a not uncommon practice amongst many Christians to take just a pause and give.
Grace,
It's a very
yeah.
very devoted, very faith-driven mode of life.
Right. Now, going back to what you said about, so Jesus says, "This is my body, this is my blood," and then, now do we take that literally, symbolically, spiritually? Is he literally there? Is it literally him? Is it some kind of spiritual presence? Is it symbolic of something? And the answer is, like you said, churches don't all come to the same answer.
Yeah.
And usually in disciples, the answer in those terms is to say that communion is important and means a lot. But what it means to people in different pews, how they understand it, is going to be different.
Yeah.
So if you agree that communion is an important ritual to share in the love of Christ and in the love of your church, then we do it. But what exactly it means to you, whether literal, symbolic, spiritual, is we recognize
Yeah.
that it's a little different for everybody.
And I think we give people the grace and flexibility to have different scopes on that in disciples. I might be skipping around on order here too a little bit, but I remember when I was in seminary, an undergrad more so. It was when I was in college. That was the first time in my life I didn't have to go to worship with my family, and I could kind of go to other churches. And a few of us went on church field trips. How do those guys do church? How do those folks do church? How does this work over here? And we visited some other congregations in Fort Worth, and it was the weirdest thing when they didn't have communion, because most of us were cradle disciples, and as a disciples on campus group at Texas Christian, which is a disciple school.
Right.
They didn't do communion, so we'd stop on the way back and get something bready and grapey,
Right.
Which is kind of goldfish and something purple from a gas station, and we did communion in the car on the way back because we didn't have communion at church. And we're like, that ritual, which at that point we'd had almost 2 decades of being steeped in that.
Right.
It wasn't church for us without
It didn't feel
without
finished.
that.
It didn't feel complete.
Literally, it wasn't. There was a piece that was a key piece that was missing.
And I've seen videos. I don't know if I've really talked to it, but there are definitely some churches that are kind of on either the non-denominational end or megachurch end that definitely do not do communion that often. To the point where I've seen videos of people who came out of those kind of churches who are like, wait a minute, what is this? And then they realized, thinking back, that they did do it once in a while at their church, but it just wasn't, it was really not, they didn't understand how important it was to the other denominations.
Yeah. And I can see value in, it's sacred, we only do it a couple times a year. I think about something that fits that for us would be Christmas Eve. Everybody's holding a candle, singing Silent Night.
Right.
Once a year, we only do that once a year.
Right.
That's a holy of holies moment.
But I wanted to put a pin in. I had,
all right,
because I printed it out, so I got to read it.
Yeah.
If you don't mind.
Yeah, please.
How strange it is and how strange it was. So I'm going to read John's description of what it means and what it is. And this is early in John. This is not anywhere near the Last Supper, which the Last Supper is in John, but it is written slightly differently than the other 3 Gospels. So this is John 6:53-63. So Jesus said to them, very truly, I guess I should set this up. He's given a public sermon.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of his kind of adversaries and the Jewish authorities there. So he's arguing with not just his disciples. So Jesus said to them, very truly I tell you, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in you. Those who eat my flesh and drink my blood have eternal life, and I will raise them up on the last day. For my flesh is true food, and my blood is true drink. Those who eat my flesh and drink my blood abide in me, and I in them. Just as the living Father sent me, and I live because of the Father, so whoever eats me will live because of me. This is the bread that came down from heaven, not like that which the ancestors ate, and they died. But the one who eats this bread will live forever. He said these things while he was teaching in a synagogue at Capernaum. When many of his disciples heard it, they said, this teaching is difficult. Who can accept it? But Jesus, being aware that his disciples were complaining about it, said to them, does this offend you? Then what if you were to see the Son of Man ascending to where he was before? It is the Spirit that gives life. The flesh is useless. The words that I have spoken to you are spirit and life. So, yeah, he lost disciples that he'd gathered because he doesn't make any bones about it.
Yeah.
And
I forgot that was at Capernaum.
Yeah.
That was not in the upper room in Jerusalem.
Right. So he's talking about it there, and it's one of those things where I think I'll just say a New Age tendency, because I got kind of New Agey there for a while, to say that to get into the overarching why Christianity. Well, there's a New Age tendency to say that religions all kind of are the same. They're all kind of saying the same thing if you really look close at them. But no, Buddhism isn't saying this.
No.
You know, it's something very specific to Christianity, the incarnation. That's an incarnation of Christ. You know, in Christmas, the baby Jesus.
Yeah.
Is, if you look at the word incarnation, carn is in carnivore.
It's flesh. It's
yeah.
body.
Embodied.
Yeah.
Right? So, it's it's kind of, well, I'll get more to this when I say what it means to me personally. But I just wanted to underline that it's an intense ritual.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to take it lightly.
Not flippantly, no.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some church traditions, they have a special, the wine and the bread goes down a special drain in their kitchen, or the bread gets fed to birds. They're very specific about how to dispose of the leftover communion, or the priest has, I believe
priest has to finish it off.
Yeah, I think Lutheran Church has that too. It's a whole, once the blessing is given, it's sacred, and it has to be handled as such. More low church traditions, it becomes goldfish and Mountain Dew at camp, or churches that are okay with that symbolic meaning.
Just like a memorial service.
Yeah.
He said.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, now going back to what you were saying. What is the controversy of open versus closed communion? What was and obviously this is a why disciples question. Disciples is very much an open communion church, founded in the Stone Campbell movement, or the Restoration movement as it's sometimes called, about 200 years ago. What were they reacting against?
A number of things, but they wanted a simple form of Christianity that got down to the basics and the roots of what most people of that time could decide. Well, this is scripture. This is a common interpretation of it, and they wanted something simple enough that on the frontier, people who might have one book in their whole community could wrap their heads around. And they found that in many churches that were in North America at the time, oftentimes their church traditions were not keen on, there were a lot of barriers to being actively part of the church, to being able to partake in communion, have communion. There was a lot of barriers to that. And you see that in some churches today. There's a fence around the communion table, or a railing, or some kind of a physical barrier, which does set it aside as holy, but the average person it was a struggle for the average person to be in good graces with the church. Fell down to interpretation by the local priest or bishop or whomever was the power of that church. Some churches you had to do X, Y, and Z and give a certain amount to be able to get a token that you could then take that token when you go to get communion and redeem that token to get. You had to hand over that token to get communion. There was a lot of barriers for the average everyday person to be able to share in communion. And a lot of the Barton Stone and Alexander Campbell, for different reasons, both came to the conclusion that there needs to be a more simple, open expression of what it meant to be a Christian in terms of people's daily practices. And they debated about a great many things, and they couldn't always come to a common answer on things. They talked about their differences. They didn't just ignore them. And they did try to work towards trying to find where they could get some common ground. And they found that in communion, they debated about baptism, whether to sprinkle or dunk, or full immersion. They debated about different interpretations of Scripture. There were a lot of things, and they were dealing with some of the contemporary issues of North America at the time. Where did people from different ethnic backgrounds belong in the church? Slavery, that was a conversation in the late 1700s, early 1800s, and so they did decide on having communion as often as they gathered, and they decided on it being open communion. There were no barriers; everybody could receive it. Interesting side note: there were African Americans in Cambridge, in Kentucky, there were African Americans in that communal worship space that they worshipped in. There was some growing edges still, but for that day and age, that was progress, that this was open to not just people that looked alike, but people from different parts of the world. They recognized their humanity, which was edgy, and there were some churches that African Americans were not, people from different ethnic backgrounds were not welcome to share in communion.
Right.
Had to be in a special loft in the back and enter through a separate door. There's some growing edges. I think we've come a long ways since then.
Right. Disciples have tried to go all the way.
Yeah.
Basically. Like, as I think you usually say, if you love Jesus, you're welcome to join us at the table.
Yeah. And I think that's become a conversation about what other barriers do we run into today that separate us from this expression of Christ's love. And maybe I'm adding my own a little bit of interpretation and flair to that, but I think that's it's not uncommon in disciples. I would argue it's common, but
is it not? Are there?
I think they would all say it's in Christ's love. I think there is still some difference in. I know some people that it's a very quiet, somber, personal you and God moment. Forgiveness of sins. I know some people that it's kind of a ruckus, kind of more family. Imagine the family getting together for the big Thanksgiving dinner, which is its own kind of ritual in its own way.
Yeah.
I like that a little more, about everybody getting together, this community that forms around this ritual. I personally love. This is my neighbor that I disagree with them politically. This is my neighbor that I can't stand. They drive me up the wall. But we are doing something together as followers of this Christ in this community. And it's a symbol of Christian unity. We may not agree on every little nitpicky detail, but we're committed to following Christ. And for us, we're going to try that. Try and do that our best, and try to give each other a little grace and latitude with that. And in essentials, have our commonality, and in our differences, we'll give each other a little liberty. And I think that's where disciples found that's restoration movement has. When it's at its best, that's where its strength lies. There are some of the more old guard disciples will argue that you need to have you need to be baptized to be able to have communion. I know a lot of kids, they have their first, and I was one of those, church I grew up in. When you don't have communion until you're old enough to understand it, which I can appreciate that, or old enough to have been baptized. Some churches are a lot more lax on that today, and are in different places on that. There's a lot of things Jesus didn't talk about. Are there rules for this or not? Yeah. Sorry if that's kind of word vomit on
No, that's good.
Some of that history, but it's at least my paraphrased, condensed version of it.
Well, I think the way it's done here, especially, and in disciples probably generally, but here for sure, is they're really open communion is supposed to mean anyone who comes in through the door who loves Jesus.
Yeah, and we don't have a questionnaire. Nobody's There's no bouncer at the door that says, "Oh, do you love Jesus? Come on in." Oh, you like him, but you don't love him. You can't. We don't have that. Usually, as a deacon, it's you guys do a great job of that. Make sure here's your bulletin. Here's the cup. Here's how we do offering. Been a couple people have commented who visited that we have that process down for how we do the logistics of communion. We do that well, and I think we embody that reasonably well as a church. At least living into our own theology and identity.
Right. People from all walks of life, all backgrounds.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah. every Sunday there are Democrats staunchly and Republicans staunchly that not to pick at the hot button, but I look at that in our look at our nation today, and I'm like, well, hey, we can find unity. On Sunday morning we can find a little dose of unity on that.
Right. It's what I mean.
It's one thing I love about disciples. At our best, we can. I think we at First Christian had, hey, maybe we can work on building something better and here.
You keep the highest, and
yeah. But I'm also an optimist to a fault, so that's who I am. But I at least am aware and admit it. But I recognize there's some people here who you are baptized before you have communion. I don't know, but I'm sure there are. I'd be surprised if there wasn't.
Right.
There's some people it's a very somber, serious moment. Others it's some folks it's there's a lot of different things going on around communion. I know.
Sure.
I don't know all of them, but I know that there's different things there, and people are looking for different things in that. And that's how, a lot of times I'll think of the bread. The symbolism I see in the bread sometimes is, I think about what bread was in the ancient world. This is sustenance.
Right.
I think about the stuff that sustains us in our daily lives, and I'm like, well, the things Jesus taught fulfill that role.
Right.
I think about community, the kinds of community that sustain us. Those are important. God's at work in those places.
Right.
I think about places of grace, forgiveness, and love. That's the symbolism I see bound up in the cup. We use grape juice here. Some churches, your Catholics, your Lutherans, Methodists will often. There's some other ones that do. It's real wine. Disciples have a little bit of a unique. That Restoration movement has a little bit of a unique turn. That there was a time some decades ago where there was concerns about alcoholism in communities.
Sure. And
some women had holds about their husbands being abusive when they were drunk, and so there became this teetotaler kind of thing that and that gave rise to grape juice being a product you can buy on the shelf as opposed to just wine.
Right.
Non-alcoholic grape juice became a thing in some small part, no small part, because of churches. Churches needed that. I'm not 100% versed on the details, but I do know that was a thing. And so as a symbol for people who and I know a number of folks in recovery groups are incredibly glad that our grape juice is our grapey thing is, I need to be careful when I pronounce that. The grape juice is grape juice and non-alcoholic, because if they're in AA, how many days clean? Well, hopefully it's not 6, because Sunday was a week ago. And I know a few churches that will even do a cup of water for diabetics. Not that this little cup that's, I think by volume, 1/4 of an ounce.
Right.
I don't think there's enough sugar in there to mess up even a brittle diabetic, but my body can process sugar, so I don't know. And if we're really open to all, well, we probably should honor the diabetic.
Right. Some gluten-free bread and.
Yeah, I made sure we have one person in our church that I know of that's gluten-free, and I want to make sure that they are welcome at the table too. And I think for me that's become this inclusive community. What does it take to get everybody there? For me, it becomes this work of kingdom building. Well, these are the people. How do we keep this? How do we get everybody to the table?
Right.
And what do we do with that? How do we be faithful in doing what God asks us to do in that?
To make people feel truly welcome.
Yeah, and not just welcome, but
included,
belong.
Yeah.
Like, I am a disciple. I'm not being let to sit at the table, but this is my place at the table. next to your place and your place, and
Right.
I like that community side of communion. So it's a little bit. I want to give space for people who it's a very somber, serious, one-on-one connection with Christ,
Right.
Or God, or however their theology around that works. But again, I know all those things are happening around communion, but that's. Hey, these folks, when they called me to serve as their minister, I recognized that was already in the pews, in varying expressions. But when they called me to serve here, I'm like, well, I want to honor that, because sometimes I don't know why they're church. You could pick any hot button issue, and they probably will all walk off mad, but yet they are church and choose to be that. And I don't know if they would walk off mad, but they do choose to be church. And I look at the work that they do to be community, to be thoughtful of each other and mindful, and being careful about how they express parts of themselves so that it works for the community. And again, I go, let's pull the Band-Aid off it. I see that with politics. Some people kind of table, they feel staunchly this way or that way. They'll set parts of that aside to be part of this community.
Right, something more important.
Yeah.
The most important.
Yeah.
Right.
And I see the work they do to be, different committees doing different ministries, and the work it takes, just if nothing else, to take care of this place that we get together in to do ministry out of. At the very bare bones of that, it's a lot of work.
Right. Well, to wrap up, I just wanted to bring up what does communion mean to you personally? And for me, I'll start with I often think Christianity, the cross. There's a horizontal component and there's a vertical component. And the horizontal component is us. It's the community. And the vertical component is the connection to God in heaven. And on the horizontal, I think about literally people passing you the cup, passing you the bread. And if you think about it, that passing, it's not just happens from the deacon as you go in, or it was passed to those deacons, and to those deacons before that, and elders and priests, and it goes all the way back. That passing of that loaf and that cup goes all the way back to Jesus himself, and people just continued to pass it on. So it goes all the way back in horizontal time to Jesus, to his disciples, and it's just a continuation until it reaches your hands in time through people. So you feel connected to all these billions of Christians all over the world for 2,000 years.
Yeah.
And for me, that can be a powerful experience.
Yeah.
And then the vertical experience, though, this is back in John 17:20. Now here we are, basically basically at the Last Supper. He's talking about stuff again, and this is his prayer for his disciples. I ask not only on behalf of these, but also on behalf of those who will believe in me through their word. Which is us.
Yeah.
That they may all be one, as you, Father, are in me, and I am in you. May they also be in us, so that the world may believe that you have sent me. The glory that you have given me, I have given them, so that they may be one, as we are one. I in them, and you in me, that they may be completely one, so that the world may know that you have sent me and have loved them even as you have loved me. So that's the I in them is, to me, what he means by eating my body and blood. As in, he means in us, making us up. Because if you think about it, regular food, just grape juice, wine, bread, it ultimately comes up from the earth, like the wheat, the grapevine have their roots in the ground, and they're pulling up nutrients out of the dirt, rainwater out of the ground to make the wheat, to make the grapes, and then the baker and the winery turn those into bread and wine, and then we eat them, and our body turns them into our own physical life. Like, that's what food is.
Yeah.
So it comes down from the earth up into us. It becomes our physical life. But Jesus comes down from heaven. So if we consume him, it's the reverse. We become part of his eternal life. So his, instead of being transformed, the earth becomes part of our physical life. We become part of his eternal life.
Okay.
So it brings us up. Like, we're made of the food we've eaten.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So if we eat food from heaven,
we become of a heavenly material.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's how I
dig it.
Yeah, that's how I think about it.
I love that. That's beautiful. Probably a little more thought out than some folks, but I think maybe even than me some days. I think communion, and maybe I'm kind of different places on communion. I see different communities function in different ways. But for me, there is this communal piece, and it's, I look at, if I think about everybody that lives in this zip code, in this block, in this county, in this state, this country, this planet, and the all of those differences and subtleties. I think about this Stone Campbell movement. Man, they had a long ways to go, but it was revolutionary to have African Americans in the same worship space. We were the first denomination that ordained women, at least in modern conventional times. And I think about some of the other issues, gender and sexuality. Those have been barriers that have kept people from being part of this community that worships around Christ. And I think about I see those different faces around the table. And any barrier. I mean, I pick at politics because that's the easy Band-Aid to rip off. But I think about that. All these different things that make us unique.
Well, I mean, in some ways, like the differences people have between the parties, Democrat, Republican, are more important to them.
Oh yeah.
They've become so important to people.
Oh yeah, and it's shaped churches.
Yeah. It's destroyed churches.
Yeah, quite dramatically. I've seen that happen once or twice.
But if those differences are preventing you from sharing this sacred meal,
or being community together, I look at each person.
Well, you got your priorities out of whack, wouldn't you say?
Me?
No. If you're letting.
If you're letting those differences decide,
Yeah.
But I look at everybody. We all have, I was taught that everybody was made by God. End period, no commas, no punctuation. It's full. Well, if everybody's made by God, then we all bear a little reflection of the divine. We all have a place at the table, and for me, it is a expression of kingdom come. I like kingdom come. Somebody preached on that at once. It's a siblinghood of things instead of this top-down hierarchy. But it puts Christ as the king in that hierarchy, not any one person. Not to riff off your horizontal and vertical pieces, but But it is. I mean, this is something that God's doing. We've been given is this breadth of humanity.
Right.
at our best, I think that's what disciples can capture. And there's always growing edges. I look at that early church;
Right.
they had a long way to go, but they were, in their own way, they were on that journey.
Right.
We might not, probably won't ever see the fullest expression of that, but we're working on it.
Right.
And I think that's, for me, where I find my calling as well. How do we, when we're our best as church and as individuals, how do we try to build a bigger table for everybody to belong? Because that's where God's at work.
Right. If people are feeling excluded and their divine spark is not being recognized, then, and they're still being, if their divine spark is not being recognized and they're being excluded from the table, then the table has some work to do.
Yeah. Or we do, Tim.
We do.
Yeah.
Right.
And maybe that's a little bit of more of a functional definition of it, but for me that's been that's what it is. And I know there's a lot of differences at that table. I do think that our differences can be strengths. You have a different skill set than I do. Thank God. There's stuff you can do I can't. I see that throughout the church, and I'm like, well, if we can all pull these together, man, look how far we could put these gifts to work in service of the church. And yeah, I don't know. It's maybe a high and lofty goal, but it's sacred enough to chase after. It's a good journey.
All right.
Yeah. That's all I got.
All right. Well, thank you.